Welcome to Leaders and Legends, the podcast focused on leadership and clinical trial execution. I'm your host, Patty Lushton, CEO of Diligent Pharma. In each episode, we'll get to know the individuals who are driving change and influencing the direction of our industry. Whether you're a seasoned executive yourself, an emerging leader, or simply passionate about clinical trials like I am, join us as we discuss our industry's most pressing challenges, the future of clinical trials, and hear insights and advice from the leaders who are moving our industry forward. Erica, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks, Patty. It's such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me. I got a chance to listen to your other podcasts, and I'm honored to be here with the other amazing leaders you've had on.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. We met just a few months ago, but we became fast friends, and it feels like I've known you for years for some reason. I think it's because we have maybe, similarities around our approaches to business building and, just how we think about things like values and culture. And I want to get into all of that. But I thought I would start with your current role and as CEO of Primum. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about Primum and the just the challenges that you're solving for with the company.
Yeah. So, when I explain Primum, I have to kind of tell a little bit of a personal story. So, uh, sort of describe it as this. So 20 years ago or so, it'll be 20 years this year, in fact, I lost my mom to cancer. And she got diagnosed with cancer. This was her third kind of go around, and we lost her in 5 months.
Oh, I'm
There
so
was really no
sorry.
treatments
Yeah.
worked. Now you take us to today. My dad, unfortunately, has been impacted by multiple myeloma, and he got
Oh,
diagnosed around 5 years ago. And since then, 15 new treatments have been approved. In fact, a new one, new
wow.
data came on about a new therapy is about to try now that gives 5 years of remission.
Wow.
Just literally just came out at ASCO that he's preparing for, which is amazing. But the reality is, those treatments are advancing so quickly that the average oncologist is having such a hard time staying on top of all those treatments. If you can imagine, every week there's a new approval or new NCCN guidelines and things changing. And so the reality is, people are struggling to stay up to date. And on top of that, particularly those in the community setting. So over 50% of patients get treated in the community. And those doctors are treating all different kinds of cancer. They're not just treating multiple myeloma cancer. They're treating multiple myeloma, lung, melanoma,
Mm,
breast, everything. And so, it's hard to do it even in an academic setting. In a community, it's even more difficult. And so what Primum is a network where we create sort of a frictionless way for community oncologists to connect with experts at major academic medical centers on treatments. So when they're not totally sure what to do, and today it's complicated, it's like sequencing this before that, or what do you start with, or what genetic test should you run at the beginning, or what trials are available. It's really hard to get that information. And so what they're forced to do today without Primum is they're going on like TikTok and messaging people or social media like Twitter and messaging people for help, or they're cold calling academic centers. And so what we've created is a free place to talk to those experts and get quick answers back. So our average response time is 2 hours. And so someone can
wow.
come on and talk to someone at Dana-Farber and get a quick response back. And the network continues to grow pretty rapidly because it's just a safe environment to have these conversations. And the example I give is, we had a fellow that was on the platform who had he just told me this recently, a stage 4 patient come to him with melanoma. His first patient he'd ever seen with melanoma. As you can imagine, it's sort of wild that this even happens. He had no idea what to do. He was thinking maybe surgery. He didn't have a lot of support from the attendees there. He came on and said, I was freaking out. I went on to Primum, actually asked this question anonymously because I was worried that, the question is dumb, as we all worry about.
Mm,
And Dr. Buckbinder at Dana-Farber responded to him and told him about immunotherapy he didn't even know about. And he called me and said, I believe this saved the patient's life.
wow.
So this is what we've created, is this incredible network for those to connect. And we also were able to underwrite the platform because we work with our biopharma partners who are really trying to understand the voices of the community oncologists. They're very difficult to engage, they have lots of patients. And so we provide their voices to pharma so that they can solve those education and awareness gaps. And then we work together to close those gaps with them. So for us, it's just sort of this amazing platform where it's sort of a win-win-win for everyone. We provide our oncologists access to these incredible experts. These experts have the chance to get actually compensated for answering these questions that they're doing informally all the time. They get the ability to spread the word about their clinical trials, and then we work with biopharma to solve those gaps. And so for me, knowing having my parents that have dealt with cancer and knowing my dad, he doesn't want to drive into San Francisco to go to UCSF. He wants to stay close to home. And so I see it firsthand is that, patients want to be treated close to home. And our goal is to make sure, it doesn't matter where you go for care in the United States, that you get the same most informed treatment decision. And that's what we're really all about.
Wow. It's a great model. I love it. And just such a powerful platform for knowledge exchange. And can you just say a little bit more about just the business model, the connection with clinical trials? So for those who are asking questions, there's no charge. Is that right? Or is it
There's no
okay?
charge. So we sort of say it's sort of as they describe it, a human up to date.
Wow.
Yeah, some
That's
frictionless.
amazing, actually. So
Mhm.
so then you're actually, without creating a cost barrier, enabling, more participation then,
That's
and which
right.
I think is really important.
That's right. That's right. And we also we publish every question that was asked on our community, and so everyone can learn from each other's questions. So it's not just your question you asked. It's this idea that every you ask a question, everyone else is wondering it too, right? And so we make it
Yeah.
available for everyone to search and learn from each other. And so we're really pushing things forward with each question. We're creating bigger impact.
Right. And then, can pharma companies also leverage that information for clinical trial design, or like from a practical standpoint, how would pharma and biotech companies leverage the information?
Yeah, so they leverage it in a couple different ways. One is just to understand, okay, what, because these are sort of unbiased, unprompted conversations, deciding on treatment, 80% of them are about should I use this medication or this one? So they use it to understand general awareness of their treatment trends in terms of when it's being discussed, first line, second line, third line, how adverse events are being managed, other medications that are part of that. So an example is maybe bridging for CAR T.
Mm,
Our clients may look and say, oh, this is the most common bridging, community is comfortable with this bridging agent. Let's make sure that's part of our clinical trial so we understand that. They can sort of understand what the current real world work is happening and use that to put that into their trial. They can also look at what's the data that's resonating most with the oncologist, make sure that they're capturing that data in their study design because they'll talk about trials and data on the platform and the gaps in that data if they see them in terms of why they may not use that medication. And so it's really sort of some excellent insights into how to design clinical trials so that the data is also meaningful for the oncologist.
wow, that's really terrific. I want to go back to sort of where you started and the impetus, I guess, for it sounds like the just the personal event of your mother's passing kind of seems to put you on a professional journey as well, just in terms of wanting to make a difference, and that infusing purpose in your work. And I wonder if you could go back because were you in your mid-20s when your mother passed away? How old were you? And then what did you do, sort of from an educational standpoint, and how did your career unfold?
Yeah, so I was 25. What happened was when I grew up, My mom had cancer as a baby, so I wasn't really part of that. She had something called Wilms tumor where she had to have a
Mm,
kidney removed, and she had a lot of radiation at that time. No one really knew you can read about it in her baby book, for example. It was just crazy to think about.
mm,
And when I was in fifth grade, I came home and learned that she had a sarcoma in her leg. Um, and it was something where it wasn't anywhere else. They were going to remove it. She was going to have some radiation in her leg, and we're moving on. The biggest impact, though, was that they were going to have to remove a muscle, and she wasn't sure she was going to be able to walk normally ever again. And so it was this first time when I saw my mom cry and be vulnerable. And so it was very, very impactful. And I can remember taking care of her and
mm,
just the stress that all came around. At the same time, my uncle's best friend had gotten cancer too. So we were just impacted that time. And then she recovered. Turns out she had a muscle removed, still could walk perfectly well, was in great shape after. And my dad was a scientist, and I, took chemistry in high school, sort of liked it, kind of, not really, to be honest with you. He was always pushing it and making it too complicated. Well, he had a PhD in chemistry, so it was like, oh no, it's got to be this. It's got to be this Excel spreadsheet. It's got to be all these things that I would bring in. And my teacher's like, what is this? It's like, here's how it works.
That's funny.
So when I went to college, I had to choose a major for the college in Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And my dad, we were filling out the application. My dad's like, what's major you're going to pick? And I said, I have no idea. I was just so young, knew nothing. He said, why don't you do chemistry? I said, Dad, I don't even like chemistry. It was terrible. He said, well, why don't you do biochemistry? And I said, all right. He said, biochemistry is the future. And I said, okay, that sounds respectable and fine. I'll just do that. So I signed up, went to school, started taking, all the math and science. And I guess, I've always liked those things. But then I took a class called organic chemistry, and for some reason, I just loved the lab. And I mean, it's just everything clicked in there, and it was just a really kind of unique experience. And the professor said, have you thought about doing an internship or checking things out? And so he got me an internship at Pfizer, and I worked in their medicinal chemistry department. I always saw the application of chemistry to medicine, and I was so excited
Mm,
because of what happened with my mom. So I came back, and to
yeah.
my dad's shock, said I wanted to go get my PhD in chemistry, which he would never have guessed because he has his PhD chemistry, and then went to graduate school at Ohio State and studied anti-cancer natural product synthesis. And then when I was my second or third year, my mom got diagnosed with cancer again. And at this point, it was like all over the place. They couldn't figure out
Mm,
where it started. So I moved home and helped her. She was an entrepreneur, and helped her close her business. And I would work there and go to the hospital and support her. So it was sort of an interesting moment where I'm like, I kind of like this business thing. It was 401k plans, and I would come in and she would sign the checks in the hospital and go back and forth. My dad and I worked together and ultimately closed the business. So anyway, that moment I was like, thank God I chose this career, because I don't know if I could keep going. I was so
yeah.
devastated, right?
Yeah.
And so it sort of just put, I think, gasoline on a passion that was already there. And this just fueled me to today. So completed my, I completed my PhD, went and did a postdoc down in San Diego at Scripps, and then started working in pharma, uh, all as I had planned. I dragged my husband out there from Ohio. At that time, he was my fiance, and worked in pharma. But I was working in the lab, but I got pregnant and couldn't really work in the lab for that 9 months. And honestly, it was just a really weird environment where it was super male dominated. And there was
Mm,
topics of like, well, now you're just um, moving papers around and maybe you should get paid less. It just wasn't a great experience. And anyway, but during that time, I got to kind of have a bigger view of things from a program management perspective. And I just think this sort of entrepreneur, like building, was always in me. And so when I came back from maternity leave, I started thinking, like, what else do I want to do? I want to do a job where I can do it all the time. I don't have to not do it
yeah.
when I'm pregnant. And my husband had gotten an opportunity to come back to Ohio. And there was a company here called Cover My Meds in healthcare technology, working in prior authorization space. It was just taking off. It was sort of this unicorn in Ohio. And I got a chance to join in product. And I have no idea why they hired me, but they did. And I learned everything about business. Essentially, got my MBA there, and I just love developing products. It's just sort of the same idea of build, measure, learn. It's the same thing in drug discovery. It's actually much more disciplined in drug discovery, and so when you apply it to software, you can develop things very quickly. And so
Hmm.
we're able to build and commercialize all different kinds of products, and it became a big growth engine of the business. And that was where I learned
Yeah.
everything about business today. And then we sold that company to McKesson, and I stayed on uh, to continue the building. And then I got recruited by the previous CEO of Cover My Meds to start a new business in autoimmune. And we were talking about migraine earlier, and migraine, and did that for a couple of years. My dad got, unfortunately, had been diagnosed with multiple myeloma during that time, and I just really wanted to get back to cancer and the science. I missed it,
Yeah.
and that was what ultimately led me to start thinking about the next thing, which was Primum.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I feel like so many dots are connecting for me now just
Yeah.
with your, your entrepreneurial spirit and also just the passion that you bring to your work. And I think a lot of people who are probably listening to this podcast have sort of similar maybe similar backgrounds where they've been touched by a family member or even themselves who've had a serious condition, and that does sort of fuel your purpose and I think that it sounds like the way that you are just from our past conversations, I kind of get the sense that you're combining a lot of grit, in terms of getting Primum off the ground with purpose. And how does that sort of filter into your culture, the way you lead? Do you feel that others in your company are also fueled by a purpose even broader than the day to day of what they're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, so many of us are touched by cancer, right? We were sitting down
Yes.
with our team just after ASCO and talking about all of us that were impacted. And I
Hmm.
think that anyone that kind of comes to this business is naturally fueled by that. We have someone on the team her wife dealt with breast cancer. We have someone whose uncle's dealing with um, prostate cancer, so it certainly fuels us. And I think it's an honor for us to support the oncologists. And we have so much
Hmm.
respect for them that in some ways I have to be careful because I could almost work too much because it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like a call to action and a mission because I know we're helping so many patients through these conversations. And so, yes, I think that the culture for us is really sort of a strong, strong connection to the mission, but also knowing that we need to take care of each other. We all are going to have personal things that happen and have to support each other through those things. And we need to find
Hmm.
that balance and be kind to each other. Because it's true, when you're a startup, it's just easy to work, 100 hours a week and you can fly. I've said this to you, I've flown a little too close to the sun at times. And we have to remember to have fun and enjoy the ride. And so for
Yeah.
me, doing a startup can be scary. There's lots of crazy ups and downs and so forth. And you just sort of have to ride through that and enjoy it. And so for us, I think that the culture is certainly a team that works very hard, but cares, brings so much heart and equivalent amount of kindness. For
Mm.
me, that is one of the most important things is just kindness and support for each other. Because, it's the reality is their most important job is their family and taking care of them. And we have to make sure that we understand that too.
Yeah. Such an interesting comment about almost kind of feeling like you can work just nonstop because you're
Mhm.
so passionate about the
Mhm.
work, and there's so much at stake too,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think it's just important to know because in some ways you have to. I'm like that as well, where I love my work. I find the just the day-to-day problem solving
Mhm.
and being part of a growth company. It's incredibly exciting, right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
It can be a little bit like a drug,
Yes.
where it's sort of like there's a bit of an adrenaline high that can come with it.
Yeah, of
So
course.
so you need
Totally.
discipline, right? To actually
Like,
um,
I
create
feel
the
like I'm
right
past that.
boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Mhm.
So how do you what do you do? Like what are your sort of kind of like go-tos to make sure that you're just having balance in your life?
Well, it's a work in progress, Patty. I'm working on it every day. Uh,
We should form a support group because I feel like I've been doing this for a long time and I'm still working on that as well. So,
it's like a balance because you also want to relieve some of your anxiety. And when you have a lot of stuff going on, it worries you. I've got all this
yeah,
ahead of me next week. And so I could think a couple things. One is you've got to get your sleep at night. You're no good if you're not sleeping. You've got to get home and
true.
get sleep.
Yeah.
And I heard this advice. It was like, what is it? 30 minutes a day of exercise, 6 hours of sleep a night, which for me is more like 7 to 8, and one day at a time.
Mm,
And finding that every day kind of gets you through things. And I think for me, it's just about reminding myself that my family is also one of my top priorities. And so, for example, getting home and reading with my kids every night and getting that time in and being present when I am home, putting the phone away. Um,
yeah.
being there for dinner, having dinner with them. But I think at the same time, on the weekends, if I come in for 3 hours and everyone's doing something else and I get a chance to kind of get ahead of the week and show up and be less stressed and be at my best self, that's not a bad thing. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that you don't have to be there for every single moment. The other thing is leaning on your spouse. My husband does things differently than me, but he's also an amazing influence on my kids. I can remember him. I can remember like when we had the first two kids, they're babies, and we had a baby and a 2-year-old. And I said, "Hey, Aaron, can you go give him a bath?" And he's like, "Yeah." He kind of looks at me like, okay, are you coming up with me? I said, no, I'm cleaning up the kitchen. You take care of it. I heard all this like screaming up there and all this stuff going on. But you know what? They came out in their pajamas and it was all good. And now I can do it. And
Yeah.
so I think it's those moments that you can't do everything. You're there for
Yeah.
the most important things and you're there to listen to your kids. And so I think they're sort of integrated in. And I just try to be as present as I can with the kids, try to get home. Um,
Hmm.
as much as I can and just be cognizant that I can't do it all and that Aaron, I have a 50-50 partnership. I could not do this without a partner that wanted to support me and fill in too.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, yeah, I feel the same way. In some ways, when my kids were little, and that's when I started my business when my daughter Jolene was a baby. So 3 little kids. Um, that actually created the built-in discipline for me
Yeah.
because I wanted to be home every day
Yeah.
by 5:30.
Yeah.
That was my agreement with my husband,
Yeah.
and I like to cook, so I would be home and I'd cook, and sometimes
Yeah.
I'd go back to work often. In the early days after they're in bed, I was kind of going back and doing things, but,
How
so
late would you stay then? Would you come
you
home late or
know, I had an office, outside of my house, so it was
yeah,
just 3 blocks away,
got it.
but sometimes I would go back into the office because I
Yeah.
didn't want to blend work and home
Yeah,
so much,
totally.
y
I
and, I do remember doing an all-nighter, writing a big proposal, and coming back and at 7 a.m. and
oh,
making breakfast for the kids, and this is like
wow.
early startup kind of
Wow.
behavior. My husband Mark was just like, "You're crazy. I don't know what you're doing," um, but, you kinda do what you have to do in
You know,
a
yeah,
way, right?
totally.
Yeah, and
I think if they don't
I'm
say you're crazy, you're like, that's just natural. Your spouse is gonna say you're crazy.
yeah, it's not something that he probably would do, but, I'm glad we're talking about this because I think that so often, women leaders, women CEOs, they actually don't talk about this that much, that, this idea of, integrating and needing to first take care of yourself and
Mhm.
also just wanting to be present for your kids, and it's not just a woman thing.
No,
Obviously, men too,
everyone.
they feel the same way, but, um, it's harder for women to talk about it, I think, because of, preconceived ideas
Totally.
around women in the workplace. I think we both have experienced, in one shape or one form or another, some sort of, discrimination
Yeah.
in some
Yeah,
ways,
totally.
and I don't dwell on it, but I think it's just, it's really interesting because in some ways, you have these 2 young boys, they're influenced
Mhm.
by your work, they're influenced by their father and the work he's doing, and this balance that the 2 of you
Yeah.
have managed to find, and I know now, I started when my kids were little, starting a business. Fast forward, they're mid-20s. My son's going to be 32 next week. I know that they have been impacted by
Totally.
this dynamic that we've had in a very positive way. I just wonder if you could reflect on that a little bit and just, do you feel like your kids are sort of in tune with the work you're doing, and how do you think about this?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I've told them, that, 50 years ago or so, more than that, it would have been hard for me to run a company and that women weren't seen as equals. And they're sort of shocked by it. They can't believe it. And they see the
Mm,
dynamic with their dad and I, and it's different than other families they see, where the dad is working a lot and the mom has a more flexible schedule.
mhm,
And so it's just sort of the normal thing that they see. And what I hope that they do is they are supportive of whoever they marry or meet, of what they want to do as well. And they understand that balance. The thing I really want them to know is to know what it means to work hard and to be equally kind. And so those are the things that I think they see is, their mom working really hard and things not always working, but still continuing to move forward, and that how hard this is. And in fact, when I went for this job with Primum, I don't know if I shared this with you yet, but they had told me, "Oh, we're already hiring someone else. Like, someone's pretty far down the line. Looks like we're gonna get
mm.
someone else. Is there another job that might work for you? Another option?" And I said, I was so proud of myself because, naturally it's like, "Oh yeah, maybe I would be." But I just said, "No, I really this is where I would want to be." And so they agreed to put me through the interview process. And I told the boys, I said, "Guys, I'm probably not going to get this, but I'm going to do everything I can to try to get it. I'm going to work as hard as I can." And they saw me do that. They saw me,
Mm,
pull some late nights, sit at my desk and do lots of research and lots of practicing and planning. And so when I got it, it was this moment that they saw, oh my gosh, you can get things like that when
that's
you work really
that's
hard.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was this really cool moment that they share. And now they're, you know, they're sort of invested in what I'm doing and they understand how important it is to me. And how impactful it is to patients. So it's been pretty cool to see them go along with it. But the other thing I tell them is it doesn't matter how much success you have. This is something I learned from my mother. You're never better than anybody else. Um, you're not better than anybody else, and to be kind to everyone. And I feel like if they approach life with kindness and they work really hard, my belief is that's the keys to success. Uh,
Mm,
and so that's really the things that I focus on with them is just ability to work really hard and to be just really kind and respectful of those that are around you.
yeah. I just had a flashback when you said that when I started my first job as a CRA at, what was ICI Americas, now AstraZeneca. My dad was he was so proud of of me, getting this
Yeah.
job. I mean, I come from
Oh,
a
yeah, totally.
small town, blue collar
Mhm.
family. My dad had 3 jobs to kind of put food on the table for
That's
7
good. Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And so right out of college, I get this job. And I was describing this job to him. And he said, it sounds like a really great job. He said, the person who comes every day to take your trash can
Mhm.
out and your job, there's no difference really.
Yes,
They're both
exactly.
really important jobs.
Yes, exactly.
And he said, you treat everybody with respect.
Yeah,
And, I just remember that moment. And yeah, just a little quick
it's
little
true. Yeah,
flashback.
it's true. It's so important. It's just such, it's a thing that I've always stuck with me forever. And, um, I remember my mom's funeral and the people that came to it that, came by our office to do the trash, or the mailman that she was locked
Yeah.
in her closet one day, and like he got her out or whatever. But
Yeah.
they all came, and that is the truth. Like, everybody's the same. Whatever job,
Mhm.
we're all equal. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Everyone has a really important job.
And I'm sure that that's infusing, the culture at Primum, and that is sort of the foundations for a great business and a
Yes.
lot of success as well. So it translates to business success, and it makes for a very great place to work too. So the 2 go hand in hand.
Yeah, totally.
I want to talk a little bit about your um, kind of decision making style, your leadership style. And on one of the podcasts, I think it might have been with Michelle
I love
Longmire,
that one.
she talked a lot about how she's really learned to trust her gut.
Mm.
And intuition is such a sort of kind of fundamental way that I actually make decisions now too after, being in business for quite a long time. And how do you think about that? Just this idea of getting to a point where you can have a visceral feeling and you can trust that feeling to drive decision making.
Yeah, I I think that's one of the most important things as a leader is you've got to be able to trust your gut and make decisions. And the reality is sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision and that's okay, but a lot of times you're going to make the right one with a partial amount of information. Um, I think a lot about I don't know where this came from. Maybe Amazon, meaning you walk through a door, you can walk back. It's
Mm.
not usually a one-way situation. And so
Mhm.
I, kind of did that almost right away with the product. I'm not an oncologist, but I have my sense on what they would like, what they won't like, what would be annoying,
Yeah.
response time, not knowing when someone's going to respond. And so there's a lot of decisions that I do just trust my gut and go with it. But also tell the team, I'm not 100% sure. This could be the wrong decision, but this is why I'm making it. So I think the other thing
Mhm.
is telling the team why you made the decision and being really
Mhm.
transparent. And when we do that, then everybody sort of understands that we're going in the same direction. But I try to hear what everyone has to say and then make the call with the best information I can. And if you get too caught up in analysis paralysis, you just don't move fast enough to make the business happen. You just don't. And there's little decisions all day long that you've just got to make a call on. Uh,
Mhm.
and I feel comfortable doing that. And I know some people don't. In fact, my dad's,
Mhm.
Erica, you make decisions quickly, and that's actually very important. Sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision, but you're going to make the right decision probably 90% of the time. And because of that, you're going to move this company forward and be fast. And he
Yeah.
can see that with me. But sometimes it also helps to ask the team quickly before you do that. If you can be fast at making decisions, is just get a pulse on the
Yeah.
team. And what I look for on the team is people that are willing to tell me what I don't want to hear. They're willing to push back on me, tell me something different, warn me, tell me I might be having a bias. And so when you have that on the team and you know they're looking around the corners for you and we have that safety, I have a lot more confidence in my decisions as well. So that is something I look for in people is I don't I've never been this person that's like, you have to disagree with me in a private room. Someone can disagree with me in a public setting. I don't care. I feel like maybe it's just my
Same.
patience. I don't having to go tell me in a side corner and just sort of like, why didn't you just tell me in
Yeah.
the meeting? Because now we're talking for 15 minutes after. But I have had bosses where if you disagree with them in a meeting, it's like so taboo. And I don't like that. That kind of culture doesn't resonate well with me.
It doesn't really work in a growing, emerging company either. It's sort of like you have to have fierce conversations in the
Yeah.
moment and
Yeah.
sometimes, wrestle things to the ground, and figure it
Totally.
out together. Yeah, I totally agree. I also wanted to just talk about sort of vision and how you kind of think about the future of Primum and all the steps that it takes to get there. But with my team, I sometimes um, half joking, but also half serious, talk about my ability to time travel, just working from right to left and really putting ourselves in the future and embodying that
Mhm.
so that we know what that feels like, right? And then we do whatever we need to do in terms of taking the right steps to get there. But for me, I have to do that in order um, to innovate, to uh, achieve my goals, essentially. How do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Wow. I love that. I just wrote that down. Embodying the future. Yeah, I mean, when I think about a couple things, we talk about manifesting. I know you and I talked about this before, writing things down. I think writing down what it looks like, where you're going, and looking at that daily is sort of the way that I put myself in that situation. And you do make
Mm,
decisions every day. You prioritize a particular meeting. You spend a little bit more time on this. You're thinking about it because you're
yeah.
constantly thinking in that direction. And then the whole company is making tiny decisions to go to that North Star. When I think about Premum today, what we have is an amazing place for oncologists to come connect and ask questions. What we're sitting on now is thousands of conversations, right? And so how do you use those conversations to better the world, to advance oncology? We can do those conversations now with AI to provide information to our users that are on this, but you can also provide that information to patients. And what's interesting about Premum is actually at ASCO, someone did a poster comparing us to ChatGPT. What's the difference? And good news is, um, doctors preferred us over ChatGPT, thank God. But the reality
I
is,
don't see the similarities at all. I mean,
yeah,
I, being
I
able
know, I
to
don't,
speak with an expert who's actually in the field and,
yeah.
versus chat,
That's
yeah,
what
I
they
don't, I
said.
don't get it.
They said it was because, I'm actually talking to someone who I know who they
Yeah.
are. It's a personal experience. The practicality of the answer is much more effective. And so the reality is we're not at standard of care. That means these oncologists are talking oftentimes off label. They're talking about things like the next things that are being studied right now. So they're sharing what
Hmm.
they're seeing in the labs and so forth, or how they're thinking about the medicines. And I think that this information I've used for my own family and friends, where I've been able to take their medical record and compare it to the conversations and found things. I found things that, a close family friend was taking the wrong medication. I found that
Mm,
someone should have considered a different diagnostic. And so I think about these conversations as not only helping oncologists, but ultimately helping patients with additional information they need to be, or questions they need to be asking their doctors.
mm,
Um, the other place that this lends nicely to is, every time we go to ASCO or ASH, or San Antonio Breast Conference, we have so many people from other countries going, can I please use this platform? Can I please talk to your oncologist? And so the opportunity to go globally and help internationally oncologists stay connected. The other thing is to go into other ologies, neurology, autoimmune, those are also
mm.
rapidly changing. It's very hard to, I saw the same thing at my last company. There's a lot of like strange cases, not sure exactly what to do, and having a safe person to ask questions. And so, what I see about Primum is just an opportunity to go to, we're focusing on oncology, but to really, really expand big time the amount of oncologists that we're able to support and the overall impact, both in oncology and also in other ologies. We also know that outcomes are better when oncologists connect. And so you can start to see this get tied into value-based reimbursement is
Mm.
is really supporting these oncologists and talking to each other. I mean, heck, we see treatment change 60% of the time because of these conversations. And so that's what I think about is I think about that we are sort of a global platform where oncologists can come and have safe conversations. They're not on Twitter talking about things publicly. They're
Yeah.
having these private conversations here. But when they have those, we allow everyone to learn from that question. And so we can really um, quickly accelerate that learning across the country.
Yeah, and so it's a such a powerful foundation, and when we think about, sort of the visioning and as you said, going into other indications, other areas, and maybe, even providing a platform for patients too in the
Yeah.
future, is that part
Yeah.
of the, what could be in store for Primum in the
Yeah.
future?
There's no reason
Very
why the learnings
exciting.
can't also come to them.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um, Erica, I this time went by so fast. I just have one more question.
Of
You can
course.
answer this any way you want, but I just want to know, like, well, first of all, I just love the spirit behind the way you do your work, and my last question is really, just what are you excited about for the future, either on a professional, uh, lens or from a personal standpoint?
Uh, let's see. I am personally, I'll start there first. Personally, this job has helped me be such a better daughter to my dad. Um, and I said he's dealing with multiple myeloma now
Yeah.
today. It has helped me come informed to his doctor's appointments. It's helped me advocate for him. It's helped shape where he's going from a treatment perspective. And I feel so optimistic about him and
Mm,
what he's going on. And when he feels stressed out, I said, Dad, we'll make a joke. Like, you're not going anywhere, Like, yes, you're annoying
yeah.
sometimes, but I know you're gonna be around for a long time because I can just see the science changing so quickly and I see the impact in my own family. Um, what I'm most excited about professionally is the team that we have and the team we're building. I'm so impressed by the folks that we have on the Primum team and their passion and their excitement and how much they care that I'm excited to continue to build this team. And we're at this point as we're growing pretty rapidly now. And so we're at that point to scale. And I'm just really excited about the talent that we're able to come on and ultimately what that's going to mean from impacting more oncologists and more patients, because that is at the end of the day why I'm here, why I get up every day. And it just makes me excited to come back from ASCO and have all these users come to us and tell us how much the platform's helping them, and then get to meet our experts in face to face for the first time that they've been
Yeah.
messaging across the country
Yeah.
and see that connection. Like, it just gives me so much energy. I always, post pictures and take them and say, stand next to each other, talk, it makes me so
Great.
excited. So that's the part that gives me the most energy, is just seeing the impact that we're making to those oncologists and seeing that's really helping them.
Yeah. Well, Erica, thank you so much. I'm just wish you all the best. I wish your dad all the
Thank
best,
you.
and really looking forward to future conversations. I'm sure we'll have many down the
I
road.
know. I
So,
felt for my first meeting with you, I felt like I could learn so much. So
well,
I
likewise.
really appreciate being here.